This being my very first broadcast on my very first channel, I would like first of all to wish all my viewers and all the Duran's viewers, the entire Duran community, season's greetings. May 2021 be a good and prosperous year for all of you, and I hope that you've also had and enjoyed a good Christmas despite the difficult conditions that many of us have faced. Can I first of all say that it's a pleasure to speak to you on this channel, as of course it is to speak with you, with my colleague Alex Christoforou on our main channel, which will remain the Duran. On this channel today, I've decided that I'm going to devote my very first interview to the country where I live, to Britain, and to the political situation here, and to one specific and very topical subject. At least it seems topical to me. Now, Britain at the moment is going through an extraordinary time. Firstly, as we know, it is in the grip of the same health crisis that is present all over the world. Many people have different views about that. There's been many criticisms of the British government over it. There's been many criticisms of our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. I'm not going to discuss that on this programme. We've spoken about it often on the Duran, on our main channel at the Duran. Then there's the other issue, the great issue, the overarching, most important issue in British politics for at least the last 15, perhaps 20 years, and which, of course, came to a head with the 2016 referendum, which is Brexit. And as our viewers mainly know, the Duran's viewers mainly know, very recently Boris Johnson managed to come back with a deal, quashing fears that there would be a no-deal Brexit. He came back with an actual deal, which is a lot better than most people expected, at least most people on the Brexit side, pro-Brexit side. Even Nigel Farage has endorsed it. Some people on the Remain side are unhappy, but even the Labour Party have said they're going to vote for it. And it is, in fact, the Labour Party that I want to discuss, because one of the most remarkable developments of 2020, the year that's just passing, is the effective political disappearance of the Labour Party as a major political force in British affairs. Now, if we take our minds back 5 years to 2015, Labour lost an election. It voted a new leader, who was Jeremy Corbyn, who is very much on the left of the Labour Party, was elected by the party membership in order to fulfil a socialist programme, and which, it must be said, was a programme that had a lot of traction with many British people. He came under a great deal of criticism. He found that the Parliamentary Labour Party was almost monolithically hostile to him. He found that he never had any proper control of the party's organisation, of its headquarters. He found the party bureaucracy stacked against him. He found the political leadership stacked against him. He found that he had to face a leadership challenge within a year of being elected the party's leader, and he seemed to be struggling to make an impact. And yet an election took place in 2017, which confirmed what many people had suspected, which is that Corbyn and his programme actually had a lot of support in the country. To everybody's astonishment, during the election, which Labour had been expected to lose badly, Labour gained support. In fact, it increased its support over the course of the election campaign by more than any other political party in post-war British history, and it ended the election only a few percentage points behind the Conservatives under Theresa May, who lost their majority. And one has to say, whatever view one has about Jeremy Corbyn, and I'm going to say straight away that he was in many ways a very flawed leader, weak and indecisive at crucial points, lacking political guile and political nous, unable to impose himself even after his victory on his party, on the leadership of his party effectively, cutting deals with his enemies who remained in fact unreconciled and intent to undermine him. But regardless of that, whatever you may think of Jeremy Corbyn, there is no doubt that he gained traction and support with many British people, particularly, it must be said, with younger people, with better educated people, with with university graduates, with people like that. In fact, the most interesting development of the 2017 election is that Corbyn and Labour in that election didn't just win the support of young people and better educated people, but it won by a fair majority the support of most of Britain's working population. So that gives you some idea of the way in which in 2017 Labour seemed to be well positioned. It was the party that everybody was talking about. It was seemed on the brink of an electoral breakthrough. It has the most dynamic part of the British population supporting it, and everybody was talking about the Labour Party and what it was going to do and what Corbyn's vision for Britain was all about. Of course, there were many opponents, perhaps more opponents than there were supporters, but nonetheless, it was an indisputable fact that under Corbyn, Labour was making waves. What has happened since? Well, firstly, as we know, Labour quickly lost its way, and it lost its way after the 2017 election because it proved to be irredeemably split on the Brexit issue. Its working class base in the north of England and in the Midlands supported Brexit, but the middle class, university educated Southern English constituency, which had been won to the party by Corbyn and before that by Tony Blair, was strongly opposed to Brexit. Corbyn lacked the political skill and the political firmness to deal with this problem and to bridge the divide. I think it could have been done, but he wasn't the person to do it. Instead, he got manoeuvred by the more right-wing faction in his party into supporting a disastrous second referendum policy, which, whatever its merits or demerits, was deeply unpopular with Labour's working class base, and in the December 2019 election, meant that Labour lost a whole swathe of seats, over 54 seats in the north of England and in the Midlands, which supported where people supported Brexit and where they voted for the Conservatives, giving the Conservatives in December 2019, under the leadership of Boris Johnson, a strong House of Commons majority. Nonetheless, it is important to say that the Labour Party's programme, other than Brexit, apparently remained popular. This is something that is borne out by opinion poll data, and it seems to be indisputably true. It is also the case that despite this heavy loss of support in December 2019, Corbyn still left the Labour Party with more support than when he found it. He's still increased the party's level of support above that achieved by his two predecessors, Gordon Brown and Ed Miliband. And in fact, he actually won more votes in December 2019 than Tony Blair did as Prime Minister in 2005. So there was still the basis for a Labour recovery there. It is now quite clear, however, that that isn't happening. And the reason that isn't happening is because, in my opinion, Labour in 2020 took the wrong fork in the road. Now, it's impossible at this point to avoid mentioning and discussing Keir Starmer, Labour's new leader, who became leader at the start of 2020, promising to continue many of Corbyn's programmes, but making it perfectly obvious after he became leader that, in fact, he saw his priority not so much as establishing a new perspective for the Labour Party, but rather in purging Corbyn and his supporters from the leading positions of the Labour Party. Incredibly, though Starmer in 2019 and before posed within the Labour Party as the arch Remainer and the strongest supporter of the second referendum policy, he has now instructed his MPs to vote for Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. Now, he has done that supposedly in order to win support back in the Midlands and in the north of England, where Labour lost all those seats, because Labour in December 2019 supported the very second referendum policy with which Starmer was most heavily associated with at that time. But in reality, and I have to say, it looks increasingly as if this whole issue of the second referendum was used by people like Starmer as a factional device to undermine Corbyn's position as party leader, and now that that has been achieved, it's been dispensed with. The problem with doing this, the problem with reverting to Blairite triangulation, a policy of trying to outbid the Conservative Party from the right, is that it isn't going to work. As Corbyn showed, if Labour wants to gain support, it needs to gain support by setting itself out as a convincing left-wing alternative. There is no scope or mileage in Britain for what in effect is a second Conservative Party, but one which is more Blairite and therefore more globalist than the actual Conservative Party that is led by Boris Johnson. That is not going to win support in the middle class, suburban and city areas which voted heavily for Corbyn and Labour in 2017 and stuck with Corbyn and Labour in December 2019. And it is certainly not going to win back support in the working class constituencies which Labour lost because of Brexit in December 2019. In those constituencies, Labour held the line under Corbyn in 2017 because voters there trusted Corbyn on Brexit, which he appeared to say that he would see through, but also were attracted to some of his more left-wing policies, which are precisely the policies that Starmer seems determined to dispense with. And that has to be the position still. So the result is that Labour today offers what is no more than a token opposition. It doesn't have the institutional strength in the media and the backing of tech companies and all those things that the Democratic Party does in the United States. It seems to me that its direction, its trajectory of travel is the same as that of all the other social democratic parties of Europe, which is downward. I predict a further Labour decline and a Conservative hegemony in Britain, which looks more entrenched than at any other time in my lifetime, even more so than at the time when Margaret Thatcher was leading the Conservatives in her heyday in the 1980s. Thank you very much for watching me on this programme. Please follow us on more programmes for the Duran, and please also watch out for more broadcasts on my channel. Thank you.